Hi, it's Tim Hagen from Progress Coaching, and welcome to another episode of Coaching Conversations. And I wanted to make you aware of something very cool that we're doing on a subscription basis, and we'll put a link in each one of our episodes. But every Wednesday, we're going to be doing what we call an audio podcast workshop. That workshop will be roughly about 14 to maybe 20 minutes per episode, with each month having a theme from a coaching model, to using feedback strategically, to coaching self-awareness, and so on. So if you could look in the body or in the content description of each episode, and you will see a link where you can join this subscription. These are literally 4 workshops every month, teaching specific strategies to address a particular area of workplace coaching, as it relates, again, to things like awareness, motivation, teamwork, and what have you. Here's the cool thing. It's only $10 per month, and each month you will get a handout that we will follow along with. So we also give you a tool for you to take notes as we go through each episode. I hope you'll check it out. Hi, everybody. Tim Hagen from Progress Coaching. And as many of you know who are my loyal listeners, one of my passions is coaching youth sports. And I've coached volleyball on and off for about 30 years. And I think youth sports, and we talk about it, obviously there's an industry that talks about it. It's a great teaching tool for kids, yet it also reveals what's wrong in the workplace. You know, I was just on a call with one of our clients, and I was meeting with an HR director, and she was telling me of a story of something that happened at her kid's basketball game. And I smiled, and she said, "Why are you smiling?" I said, "Oh, I've been through it. I've seen it all. From yelling at refs, from, parents yelling at coaches for playing time." And I said, it just is what we inherit in the workplace. And she stopped and gave me this funny look. And she said, "That's really interesting." I said, "Think about it. We inherit almost 8 to 10 years of non-professional feedback behaviors." She said, "That is an interesting way to put it." I said, "Yes, we have not been taught. We have been really taught non-professional feedback behaviors. We spend so much time on calculus and trigonometry and history, and those are important topics. I don't profess that they shouldn't be taught. I'm not saying that. So this master episode, I'll even call it a master class, teaches us how youth need to be coached to enter the workplace literally 8 to 10 years later, because those 8 to 10 years we are cultivating poor work habits. Now, let me share with you what triggered this episode. Recently, I was reading a magazine article, and a young lady posted on Twitter for a software company her termination. And I'm watching this, and it was uncomfortable. They weren't giving her answers. She was at the company only 4 months, and she was in a sales job. She hadn't made a sale. When the HR department said, "We're going to part ways with you," she goes, "I'm going to stop you right there." And it taught something. It teaches us all something. Now, whether her termination is fair or unfair, we don't really have context. But the fact of the matter is, she immediately took over the call. "I'm going to stop you there. By the way, I'm videotaping this." Now, nobody's going to say it. I'll say it. Why would you ever hire her? There would be fear of something go out into the viral world. And by the way, she hadn't made a sale. So the point being, running a business is hard. There are no perfect answers, but we have become a very litigious social society. If I don't like something, I'm going to post it. Now, what happens if the employer posts something about the employee saying, "We're letting so-and-so go today. She's not performing"? There would be lawsuits. What has happened to our society? Now, this young lady may have had reasons to feel upset, and I get that. Yet, what is she hoping to achieve? It's always like when you think about these reality shows, these dating shows, isn't it amazing? They're all good-looking people. And I always ask my wife, I said, how come they can't get a date? That makes no sense to me. They're there for other reasons. This young lady videotaped it for reasons other than just doing the right thing. In 4 months, she had that much animosity against her employer to videotape it? I remember at one of our client sites, a young gentleman did the same thing. videotaped his termination, posted it on Facebook. Later ran into him and wanted to use me as a reference. I said, there's no way I would give you a reference. I don't want my name associated with that. So why does this occur? Let's think about our youth. Let's think about sports. We get on a team, and I often have been famous for writing this article, What Youth Sports Teaches Us About, the workplace. And one of the pictures I put in is a silhouette. What a parent sees is a silhouette of one person or one kid, and I put underneath the caption, my kid. Then I have another one, what a coach sees, and it's a silhouette of like 5 or 6 silhouettes of kids who are playing, and it says the team. That's what a coach sees. Right there is a contradictory set of expectations. Now, many parents will say, I really go and watch all the kids play. No, we really watch for our kid. Of course we watch for our kid. And when our kid is not in the game, what do we look for? We look at how they're feeling. So I want to introduce a couple concepts. And again, hopefully this is a masterclass to help not only from a parenting, from a coaching perspective, yet to also realize what we get in the workplace. So there's a tool that we teach called emotional interpretation. Emotional interpretation is when we interpret what's going on emotionally, we react to it. So when that young lady got fired, what was her first reaction? I'm going to stop you right there. She didn't really even know the reasons. Then later complained she wasn't given reasons, and she wasn't. Yet, did she really make it inviting to receive the reasons? Did HR pull back and thought, we might have a litigious situation here. She's really upset. Let's not give her reasons that will, fuel her anger even more. We absolve ourselves of those behaviors. So in the last 2 weeks, I have been talking to parents, clients, and we get into the subject of youth sports, and it's one of my favorite topics. And I think about what we're going through in society. One person told me that, she was at a basketball game. This kid was getting angry when he got fouled, really good player, and ended up picking up a kid and body slamming him because he got fouled. And his dad yelled something to the effect of, get him, kill him. What is wrong with that situation? Also heard of another situation, and this is just in my local community, where a referee was hit from the back to the side of his head, punched, because he was making bad calls during the basketball game. So let me fast forward. Now, this is not everybody. Nor is this episode designed to say, look at what's wrong with everything in youth sports. That's not the objective. It's designed to be thought-provoking so we can all create a better experience, yet more importantly, prepare our kids for the workplace. So when you think about kids who are in youth sports, we don't talk about it enough. We talk a lot about playing time, but we don't talk enough about grit, resilience, teamwork. Grit, guts, resilience, intensity, tenacity, resilience, overcoming change and challenge, teamwork, being a great teammate. Now I want to introduce you to that concept of emotional interpretation. See, there's this notion parents live through their kids. That's not it. What parents do is they fail to understand their emotional reaction. They're watching their kids struggle, so they want to go solve it. It's uncomfortable for us to watch our son or daughter sit and maybe look disappointed, which is also a reflection of what we're teaching and our parenting. We may not want to admit it. I remember when my kid was not playing much in basketball, I said to him, Liam, you have a choice. You can sit back and look pissed off, or you can lean forward and tell the coach, whenever you need me, I'm ready to go in. That will trigger his view of you, whether to put you in the game. Now, it's not a fast and tried rule. It doesn't work all the time. Yet you should sit forward. What happens in the workplace? When somebody gets promoted and you went for the job, are we honestly happy for that other person? Or do we get pissed off and tell 3 other people, he really wasn't qualified. I can't believe they gave him the job. We hear it all the time. 71% of people, according to the Gallup organization, 71% are neutral or actively disengaged, meaning they're negative in the workplace. Leaders have it tough. Now, that does not absolve leaders from poor leadership or poor management. It's also called life. I often tell people, what's the greatest thing your kid could have during their childhood? Is a crappy teacher and coach. And I've said that, and I'll get these weird looks from parents like, what are you talking about? I said, seriously, it teaches them what they're going to get in life. I'll ask you a question. Would you want to manage or coach you? Is your attitude always upbeat? So when you're at work, do you talk about the positive things your leaders and organization do? Or do you complain of what they're not doing? So when the youth go through a sports experience, and we'll use sports, but when the youth go through that, we have to also realize that they go through that, and there's a number of things at play here. Teamwork, individual performance, practice, getting better. What happens when they go through junior high school, maybe college? That's 8 to 10 years. Do you know during that time frame, not once have any of the people during that tenure gone through a semester-long course on how to pursue feedback professionally, thoughtfully, and plausibly. Think about that. They enter this thing called the workplace. Guess what happens? They start getting feedback. They start getting insight. They start getting mentoring. They start getting trained. They start hearing things they don't like, and they react to it. Now, this young lady in the video, she was prepared. She put a caption in the video. I had to compose myself for 15 minutes before. She was not composing herself. She was getting ready for an argument. Now, let me add some further context. I had somebody at one of our client sites not get a job. She was on a shop floor. I love sharing this story. She was on a shop floor of a manufacturing company. And she was talking about how it was unfair, the interview process. And she was telling 3 people in the lunchroom that during the interview, the guy attacked her. That's a verbatim quote. Well, the guy just attacked me the whole interview. Attacked, by the way. Now, I don't know what you're thinking right now or what's going through your mind, but the word attacked is not a very calm word. It's not one that typically represents an interview. Let's go back to emotional interpretation. Emotional interpretation, when you think about it, it really teaches us a lot of different things. So when you think about emotional interpretation, we first have an emotional reaction. Then we have an interpretation of what was said. Then we articulate our responses, or maybe don't articulate, and then there's an emotional reflection. We actually have something called the RIAR assessment, R-I-A-R. Reaction, interpretation, articulation, reflection. In that moment, most people don't calmly react. Most people emotionally react. When we get feedback, we don't calmly think to ourselves, you know what, my attitude does stink. We tend to come up with reasons like, well, give me an example. We don't really want an example. We want an example so we can situationally explain it away and rebuttal. So that initial emotional reaction puts a chain of events into play. So I always go back to one fundamental thing, and I share this with people in the work world as well, the push-pull effect. The way you interact, are you pulling people towards you or pushing them away? Think about someone with a really crappy attitude. They come into a room. Do you walk towards them or you walk away from them? Typically, we walk away. Now, here's the worst part. Great study done by a lady, Tasha Eurich, who talks about self-awareness. There isn't a person in the world that'll say, I got to let you know, my attitude stinks. It's going to be pretty crappy the next couple months. Just want to let everybody know. In her study, 95% of the people during the survey process said they were highly self-aware. When she tested them, she found out only 10% were. That means 85% of people significantly lack self-awareness. I promise you, I know I do, I know you do. You have blind spots. So what do? Sometimes we got to get feedback and we got to just be quiet and listen and realize, wow, that's a perspective somebody has. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it. Doesn't mean you have to immediately dismiss it and disagree with it. So what happens during the youth when we don't have a good teacher, do you know how often we use phrases such as, well, I don't think the teacher likes my kid? That is the most ridiculous comment you can ever make. Can you imagine somebody saying, I really want to go into higher education. I want to teach junior high school kids because I just want to hate them. It doesn't make sense. Number 2, coaching. How often do we hear parents say, well, I just don't think it's fair? Now, when the kid hears that, and the kid hears it, by the way, guess what happens? The kid goes into a stratosphere. Yeah, it's not me. This is really unfair. Welcome to the world of victims. So now, from youth sports to high school to college, we have cultivated 8 to 10 years of blind spots, of not looking in the mirror, cultivating a lack of self-awareness, avoidance of feedback acceptance. We have now created non-professional feedback behaviors. So you know what we do? Boy, do we complain about leadership. Leadership's tough. I once did something at one of our parent meetings when I was coaching volleyball, and I said to the parents, I will change the lineup to anybody's liking. You just write out the lineups and I'll do exactly what you say. The parents were looking at me like, well, this is weird. Normally there's a policy about playing time and we have a 24-hour rule before you can approach the coach. I didn't do that. I had a couple rules. I don't take texts. I don't take phone calls. I don't take emails. I do it face to face. If you want to deal with conflict, become skilled at conflict. But there's a number 1 rule I always did. Actually, 2 rules. Number 1, when I had that parent meeting, that was my rule. I will change the lineups to any parent's liking anytime you want. And I just left it there. I knew somebody was going to always ask the question. And someone would say, well, how can you do that? I mean, how would that work? I said, well, just tell me if your kid wants to play more. Just tell me that you want your kid to play more, and I'll change the lineups for you. I don't want to fight about playing time. So I'm actually using the normal objection from parents against them. And one parent will raise their hand and say, well, how would you do that? And I said, I forgot the number 1 rule. I'm sorry. When you change the lineups, just get the approval of all the rest of the parents on the team. Everybody breaks out laughing. Little do they know, they're laughing at themselves. I said, I will change the lineup. Now, the other thing I also reserve the right is that when you come and talk to me, it's not private, it's public. You're all going to talk about me and what I'm doing right or wrong, and you talk in the stands because my wife and my friends who sit in the stands hear you. You should see the heads go down. I said, so whatever you come to me about your kids' playing time, I'm just going to reserve the right to share it publicly. And I'll have a mom raise her hand and say, well, that makes that really uncomfortable. I said, then I wouldn't come. Let me do my job. You were not hired to coach. I was hired to coach. I am highly skilled in coaching volleyball. If you are, I would love some help. But I'd like to see your resume. And the group starts laughing. So what happens is, in that moment, that's what I would do. That's the first thing I did. I also say in the form of conflict, when a parent would come to me and say, I'm really getting upset. Remember emotional interpretation. I'm upset. I'm emotional. They're upset and emotional about something they don't even have an answer to. And actually, the answer's already in their household. As coaches, as teachers, continually provide feedback. Now, I will give you the rule of 3 to 1. Give 3 doses of positive feedback for every constructive feedback. Not to avoid constructive feedback, but to gain momentum and trust within the relationship. Let's be candid. In 31 years, I asked this question. When somebody is called into the office, they're called into the office by the boss, what's the employee's first impression? Do you know I've never had a positive response to that question? In webinars with thousands of people, clients, it's always, what did I do wrong? Because we have conditioned that. So what leaders have an opportunity to do, what parents have an opportunity to do, is to understand the power of progress. When you share with somebody what they did well, and yes, commending them for being a great teammate and cheering for the kids that were actually in the game. Reward that effort because you will condition that effort. If you go to the coach and your kid will know what happens, you start playing more as a child. Do you really feel like you've earned it? Now you don't even feel good about the playing time because the parents have orchestrated it. Or if the coach pushes back and the parent gets upset, remember emotional interpretation. Well, your coach just wouldn't listen to me. Guess what happens? The kid starts to cultivate the belief system. Yeah, you know what? It isn't me. I'm pretty good. I should be playing in front of Johnny or Susie. And what happens is this starts to cultivate a set of behaviors over time. I'll never forget, my son got cut from baseball freshman year. And I had a number of adults reach out to me and say, hey, and my son really enjoyed baseball. We really, maybe you should go to the coach. And the coach was a gentleman by the name of Jack Freeze. And Jack is still a good buddy of mine today. His son is a client of mine at the Milwaukee Brewers. And I didn't really have any attempt to do that because I thought to myself, okay, I go to the coach. Let's say I'm successful. My kid would be ostracized. He wouldn't feel like he earned it. He wouldn't be deserving, and other kids would hold it against him. Maybe justifiably so. So certainly I did not talk to Jack about it. Now, Jack and I have gone to baseball games since that time when Liam got cut. Till this day, we've never talked about it. Let me be candid with you. Was it easy? No. Did I want to make it better for my kid? Absolutely. Yet I had to think, I had to reflect. Let's say you're successful. What have you really achieved? When a teacher changes a grade because a parent goes and sees them, what have you accomplished? You've conditioned complacency. So what we have to do is understand each and every one of our roles. Coaches coach, teachers teach, parents parent. And those lines have become very blurred. We all know that. If you want a dose of objectivity and humility, officiate a game. Officiate a game. And I remember a really good friend of mine in our local community, Steve, he hated refereeing because we would ref these youth recreational basketball games. The parents would ref. And it got so obnoxiously volatile. And he once said to his wife, he goes, oh, good. We were the Lakers. He said, we're the Lakers coaches. That's the game I got to ref. All he does is joke around. And he was referencing me. We just saw each other years later. And he mentioned it to me. And I said, oh, I hated reffing those games. People would scream at you. We were volunteers. We had jobs. We didn't need to do this. And so what happens is we lose emotional interpretation. We lose emotional control. We don't calmly react to things we don't hear. We don't calmly react to them. We emotionally react to them. And what happens when we emotionally react to things? We share it with other people. And do we put a narrative on it? Well, I don't think that coach knows what he's doing. I mean, it's like he has it out for my kid. Really? He has it out for your kid. And so what we have to think about as parents is our youth need a couple skill sets later in life. Grit. I don't think anyone would argue that resilience is an important attribute. The ability to accept and embrace and work through change is an invaluable skill set. The ability to listen to others and really absorb what they're saying is a valuable skill set. Yet when we complain, when we yell at refs, when we yell at coaches, when we gossip and tell 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 people what was so horribly unfair for your child, we have cultivated their belief system to think it's not me. Can't be me. So Mom and Dad, I'm going to continue to resist like you guys. I'm going to carry this through. Don't you worry about me. I'm going to keep the family legacy going. Now, as crass and obnoxious and as condescending as that sounds, That is exactly what happens. Grit, guts, resilience, intensity, tenacity, overcoming change. Let me just say something boldly. Listening and just shutting up and not sharing it with the world because you didn't like what you heard. So think about this. Let's go from the youth to the college. Let's go to the workplace. I think one of the best interview questions we should ask people, not about their successes or anything like that, but I think what they should do is we should ask one fundamental question. When you are faced with adversity or change or things that you don't like, what will we see? I just asked somebody that question and their jaw dropped. And because they don't think about it. Remember RIRE. Remember I just gave you that acronym, right? So RIRE is reaction, interpretation, articulation, reflection. Most people don't reflect. So when you think about that, if we're not reflecting, we're not really owning our behaviors over our shoulders, our past. Think about this for a second. I love this example. Two people get in an argument, right? And they're two friends. And they say some things that they shouldn't have said. They took things out of context. A couple days go by, they bump into each other, and what do? Well, look, hey, John, sorry, I owe you an apology. I said some things I shouldn't have. Yeah, me too, Tim. What happens? Time does a wonderful thing. It gives us time to really think about ourselves and our behaviors. So let's think about the stages. We have our youth. They go to junior high school. They go to high school. They go to college. They enter this thing called the workplace. 8 to 10 years, we have been cultivating belief systems. We have cultivated a belief system to accept feedback or fight feedback. Typically, there's no middle ground. We have created an attitude. We have helped our child develop their attitude of I'll overcome change or challenge, or I'll fight it because I'm a victim and it's not my fault. This is what's inherited in the workplace. So let's go back to that young lady posting that video. She posted it on Twitter. It is all over the internet. Now the CEO of the company came out and said, yes, there's certainly some things we did wrong. Wow. I wish we were all videotaped for 24 hours and we were willing to sit through people critiquing what we did right or wrong. Would you honestly say your video would be flawless? Of course it wouldn't. What we have to realize in the workplace is we are inheriting cultivation of behaviors. I do believe we are cultivating non-professional feedback behaviors. I often teach in our work with our clients is something called a listening chat. Going up to someone, whether it's peer-to-peer or from your boss or bosses asking for it, such as what are 2 things I do well? What are 2 things you'd encourage me to improve? Where I have an opportunity to raise my game. It doesn't have to be constructive in nature. Do you know how often people will come back after 2 or 3 and say, oh my gosh, that was hard. I was so mad. Why were you mad? You're mad because you heard something you didn't like. And what you're really revealing is you're just not used to it. Do you honestly think you have nothing to improve? So in the moment, we react. We don't react logically, rationally. We react emotionally. And it cultivates itself in so many other parts of life, like Republicans and Democrats going out for a calm lunch. I bet you're laughing right now. When we hear feedback from our boss, even when it's inaccurate, what do? We dismiss it. We tell 5 other people. Oh, by the way, they tell 4 people. Now there's 20 versions and your version has left the building of reality. That's part of your brand. That's what you're sharing with the world. May not be your intention. And by the way, what if your leader made a mistake and they misunderstood something? Isn't that an opportunity to say, look, I hear you. Would you mind if I shared with you a couple insights? And that might give a different version or a different perspective of what you're bringing up. And maybe it will, maybe it won't. Do you know how many leaders will listen to that? Everybody. Yet when we fold our arms and say, yeah, but I wasn't the only one. I feel like this is unfair. Just like the young lady in the video. Well, I'm going to stop you right there. We don't listen to each other. So think about, if you're a parent, your child, developing grit and resilience and listening skills. If you're a teacher or coach, Remember, 3-1, praise, praise, praise. Yes, they have areas where they need to improve. Use the word opportunity instead of constructive or feedback. Language matters. Then when we get in the workplace, let's continue that work. If we reverse engineer this, and all of these entities from youth to teachers to coaches to bosses work congruently, and it's idealistic, and I realize may not even be possible. Yet if we started that now with each person, good things will happen. Let me lead with this or summarize with this. My daughter, Bridget, works out at Corning University. And I always told her, I said, Bridget, it's a weird thing to share. And it's a stupid, one of your dad's stupid analogies. Show up early, stay late, and be relentlessly helpful between those 2 hours. You'll never have to worry about employment. And she's gotten that feedback. Little did her employer know that I had given her that insight. And they've used those types of words. So when we're fighting, my kid isn't playing. When we're fighting, my kid deserved an A and not a B minus. When we're fighting establishment, when we're posting things socially, we're telling the world, don't look at me, for God's sake. It can't be me. It's got to be somebody else. It's BS. It's wrong. Teachers, coaches, use coaching. Parents, coach your kids. Ask them questions. Stay calm. And the number one thing you can ask your kid today is, what are you going to do to successfully overcome this? It's called the self-actualized question. It develops the mindset to gravitate towards this thing called grit and resilience. Guts, resilience, intensity, tenacity. What are you going to do to successfully overcome that challenge? And what can I do to help you? What that does is it uses a framing technique. All of these entities, from youth, teachers, coaches, officials, to bosses in the workplace, we have interdependencies between all of those entities. So let me ask you, what are your thoughts? I hope this helped. Thank you for listening to another episode of Coaching Conversations by Tim Hagen and Progress Coaching. Now, our company is always coming out with new and innovative solutions to help leaders coach their employees. And recently, we just created a new service called Coach to You, where leaders can pick and choose topics and assign 7 to 21-day programs for employees to learn and, more importantly, apply actions and then reflect and share what they're going to do going forward as a result of the learning. It's called Coach to You. We're literally bringing coaching to your employees. If you're intrigued, we'll have a link in each one of our episodes where you can get more information. And again, thank you so much for listening to another episode.